Captain Lee Minho gripped the command chair as space itself seemed to tear apart before his eyes. The UES Endeavour's sensors screamed warnings as massive dark shapes emerged from the swirling hyperspace portal. One by one, alien warships materialized. Like nightmares given form, their hulls black as the void between stars and bristling with weapons that made Earth's finest cruisers look like toys. "Mother of God," whispered Communications Officer Kim Taijin, his hands trembling over the control panel. The bridge lights flickered as the alien vessel's energy signatures overwhelmed their detection systems. Lieutenant Park So-young's voice cracked as she read the sensor data. "Captain, I'm counting 12 vessels. The smallest one is 3 times our size, the largest—" She paused, double-checking the readings. "Sir, their flagship is the size of Manhattan." Minho felt his crew's eyes on him, 26 souls under his command, all looking to him for answers he didn't have. The Endeavour was humanity's most advanced exploration vessel, equipped with the latest fusion drives and quantum computers. Against these alien behemoths, they might as well be throwing rocks. The communications array suddenly burst to life with a sound like grinding metal mixed with the roar of distant thunder. The Universal Translator, humanity's proudest diplomatic achievement, struggled to process the alien language. "Primitive beings of the third planet," the voice rumbled through the bridge speakers, each word dripping with contempt. "I am Commander Thexvor of the Calrian Imperial Fleet. Your pathetic species has caught our attention during our expansion through this sector." Navigator Lee Ji-hoon's console showed the alien formation spreading across space like a dark web. "They're positioning themselves in attack formation, Captain. Classic pincer movement. Your crewed vessels emit energy signatures so weak we initially mistook them for space debris," Thexvor continued, his laughter echoing like breaking glass. "We have conquered 17 star systems. Entire civilizations kneel before the might of the Calrian Empire. Your resistance would be amusing if it were not so futile." Engineering Chief Yoon Jisu's voice came through the intercom, tight with barely controlled fear. "Captain, their weapons are charging. I'm reading energy levels that could crack a moon." Minho straightened his uniform and activated the response channel. His voice remained steady despite the chaos around him. "This is Captain Lee Minho of the United Earth ship Endeavour. We are peaceful explorers on a diplomatic mission. We request dialogue and mutual understanding." The alien commander's response was immediate and brutal. "Peace? You dare speak of peace to the Calrian Empire? Your species builds ships like children playing with metal scraps. Look around you, human. We have turned proud warrior races into slaves. We have watched sons die at our command." On the main screen, holographic images began transmitting from the alien fleet. Worlds burning under orbital bombardment, cities reduced to glass and ash, alien beings in chains, their eyes empty of hope. The crew watched in horrified silence as civilization after civilization fell before the Calrian war machine. "The Zenthari fought us with crystal ships that could phase through matter." Thexvor's voice grew darker with each word. "We adapted. The Gorvak possessed minds that could control gravity itself. We overcame them. The proud Nexarians built space fortresses that could move between dimensions. All now serve the Empire." Weapons Officer Park Min-woo's hands hovered over the firing controls. "Captain, should I arm our weapons?" Minho shook his head slightly. "Their pulse cannons and plasma torpedoes would be like firecrackers against these monsters." "This is Captain Minho again. We respectfully decline your ultimatum. Perhaps we could arrange a meeting between our peoples to discuss—" "Enough!" Thexvor's roar shook the bridge speakers. "Your arrogance disgusts me, human. You speak of meetings while floating in ships that could not damage our armor if you fired for 1,000 years. This insult to the Empire cannot stand." The alien ships began moving closer, their weapons arrays glowing with deadly energy. Warning klaxons blared throughout the Endeavour as the tactical systems detected targeting locks. "Hear me, creatures of the Third World." Thexvor's voice turned cold as space itself. "You have 72 of your planetary rotations to gather your leaders and surrender unconditionally. Kneel before the Empire, and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will turn your blue world into a monument of glass and fire." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Outside the viewports, the alien fleet held position like predators, watching trapped prey. Their ships pulsed with energy that made the stars themselves seem dim. "Orders, Captain?" So-Yung asked quietly. Minho looked at his crew, seeing fear but also determination in their eyes. These aliens had made one critical mistake. They thought humanity would break like all the others. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. Dr. Kim Ji-won hadn't slept in 36 hours. Her xenobiology lab buzzed with activity as holographic displays cast eerie blue light across her tired face. The alien broadcast played on repeat, showing world after world falling to the Calrian Empire. But Ji-won wasn't watching the destruction. She was studying the victims. "Computer, analyze genetic patterns of conquered species 14 through 17, she commanded, her fingers dancing across the control surface. Data streams flowed like waterfalls of light around her workstation. Her assistant, Dr. Huang Minjae, looked up from his molecular scanner. "Professor, I've been running behavioral analysis on the Zenthari resistance footage. Something's not right here." "What do you mean?" Ji-won asked, not taking her eyes off the swirling DNA helixes rotating before her. "Look at this." Minjae projected his findings onto the main display. Every single battle follows the exact same pattern. The aliens attack in formation, the defenders respond with identical tactics, then they surrender when their leaders are eliminated. Ji-won stopped working. "Show me the Gorvak conquest." The hologram shifted, displaying a different alien race with crystalline bodies that sparkled like living diamonds. Their ships moved in perfect geometric formations, each vessel maintaining precise distance from the others. When the Calrians attacked, the Gorvak responded with textbook defensive maneuvers that any military academy would recognize. "Now show me the Nexarian battle," Ji-won whispered, her heart beginning to race. Another scene materialized. The Nexarians, tall beings with multiple arms and insect-like features, fought with the same rigid discipline. Their space fortresses, massive and powerful, moved in predictable patterns that the Calrians had clearly learned to counter. "They're all the same," Ji-won breathed. "Every conquered species thinks collectively. They follow orders without question. They respond to threats the same way every time." The lab doors hissed open as Admiral Choi Dae-sung strode in, his uniform crisp despite the chaos erupting across Earth. Behind him followed General Park Seung-ri and Colonel Yoon Jin-wook, their faces grim with the weight of impending war. "Dr. Kim," Admiral Choi's voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded fleets among the stars. "The Global Defense Council needs your assessment immediately. Our preliminary analysis shows these Calrians have technology centuries ahead of ours. Can humanity fight them and win?" Ji-won turned from her displays, and for the first time in days, she smiled. "Admiral, they've made a critical error. They assume we're like every other species they've conquered." "Meaning what exactly?" General Park stepped forward, his tactical mind already working through possibilities. "Every species in their conquest history shows identical characteristics." Ji-won began pulling up comparative data. Hive mind thinking, rigid social hierarchies, collective decision-making, and most importantly, predictable behavioral responses to stress. The holographic display showed brain scans from dozens of alien species. Each one revealed neural pathways that moved in synchronized patterns like synchronized swimmers in a cosmic pool. "Look at this Zenthari battle commander," Ji-won pointed, to a crystalline being giving orders. When faced with an unexpected attack, he consulted with his collective consciousness and responded with standard defensive protocol 7. It took them 4 minutes to make a decision. Colonel Yoon frowned. 4 minutes is an eternity in space combat. Exactly. Now look at human neural patterns. Ji-won switched the display to show human brain scans during combat simulations. The patterns were chaos incarnate, with neural pathways firing in completely unpredictable directions. When a human pilot faces the unexpected, individual creativity kicks in. We adapt, improvise, and sometimes do things that are completely insane. Admiral. Choi studied the data carefully. "You're saying their entire military doctrine is based on fighting predictable enemies." "More than that," Jiwon's excitement grew as she pulled up tactical analysis. Their battle formations are mathematically perfect. Every ship has a specific role, every maneuver follows established patterns. They've conquered 17 star systems, using the same playbook because it worked every single time. Dr. Minjae added his own findings. Sir, I've been analyzing their weapons systems from the transmission data. They're designed for maximum psychological impact against species that respond collectively to fear. But humans don't think collectively, General Park realized, his eyes widening. We're individuals first, team players second. When humans are afraid, we don't surrender, Jiwon continued. We get angry, we get creative. We start doing things that make no tactical sense but somehow work anyway. On cue, her communication device chimed with incoming data from observation posts throughout the solar system. Admiral, the Calrian fleet is maintaining perfect battle formation as they approach. Look at this. The display showed the alien vessels moving through space like a choreographed dance. Each ship held precise position relative to the others, creating geometric patterns that would be beautiful if they weren't so terrifying. They're flying in formation that any human pilot would call a death trap, Colonel Yoon observed. One coordinated attack could take out multiple vessels. But they've never faced an enemy that would think to try that, Admiral Choi said slowly. They've only fought species that attack in the same predictable ways. Across Earth, humanity was already proving the aliens' assumptions wrong. In the lunar shipyards, engineer Kim Dongwoo was installing racing engines into military vessels, creating ships that could accelerate beyond safe limits. On Mars Station, Dr. Lee Sumin was removing safety protocols from weapons systems, pushing them far beyond manufacturer specifications. Admiral, Jiwon said, her voice filled with quiet confidence, they're about to learn what happens when you threaten a species that sees rules as suggestions and treats impossible odds as interesting challenges. The war was coming, and humanity was about to teach the galaxy a lesson about the power of controlled chaos. Captain Yoon Tae-hyung floated in the zero-gravity command center of the UES Phantom, watching Saturn's golden rings stretch endlessly before them. His squadron of 12 human vessels hung motionless in space, engines cold, appearing defeated and broken. It was the perfect trap. Captain, the Calrian fleet is approaching, whispered Lieutenant Han Naeon, her voice barely audible as she monitored the enemy's sensors. 6 heavy cruisers in diamond formation, just like the tactical computer predicted. Through the reinforced viewport, Taehyung could see the alien warships emerging from the darkness like metallic predators. Their hulls gleamed with an oily black finish that seemed to absorb light itself. Energy weapons charged along their sides, creating patterns of deadly blue fire that would have terrified any sane military commander. They're scanning us, reported Weapons Officer Kang Sunwoo from his station. Full active sensors trying to determine our damage level. Taehyung grinned. The human ships had deliberately vented atmosphere and shut down non-essential systems to appear crippled. Scorch marks from their own plasma torches decorated the hulls, making them look like survivors of a devastating battle. Sir, incoming transmission from the lead Calrian vessel, announced communications specialist Park Ji-young. Put it through, Taehyung ordered. Commander Thexivor's harsh voice filled the bridge. Human vessels, you are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be swift. Resist and we will make examples of your crews. Taehyung activated his response channel, injecting fear and desperation into his voice. Calrian Commander, our ships are badly damaged. We need time to evacuate our wounded. You have 5 minutes, Thexvor replied coldly. Then we begin target practice. The alien formation moved closer, maintaining their perfect geometric spacing. Each Calrian ship held precise position relative to the others, creating a textbook encirclement that had worked flawlessly against 17 different civilizations. They're positioning exactly where we want them, Lieutenant Naeon reported, her fingers dancing over sensor controls. All 6 vessels are committed to the attack formation. Taehyung watched the tactical display as the Calrian ships moved deeper into Saturn's gravitational influence. The aliens had no idea they were flying into the most complex gravity well in the solar system, where the planet's dozens of moons created a three-dimensional maze of invisible forces. "Execute Maneuver Delta 7, Taehyung commanded quietly. What happened next would have been impossible for any species that followed conventional military doctrine. The seemingly crippled human vessels suddenly roared to life, their fusion engines blazing with power that sent them spinning through space in trajectories that violated every law of safe navigation. The UES Phantom dove straight down toward Saturn's rings, disappearing into the glittering ice and rock debris. The UES Striker used Titan's gravity to slingshot around the massive moon, emerging from the opposite direction at twice its original speed. The UES Lightning actually flew between two Calrian ships, so close that their shields sparked against each other. "What are they doing?" Commander Thexvor's voice cracked with confusion as his tactical display dissolved into chaos. "This is not warfare, this is madness." His formation began to break apart as human ships appeared from impossible angles. The Calrian battle computers, programmed with the tactical patterns of 17 conquered civilizations, simply could not process what they were seeing. On the bridge of the Phantom, Pilot Officer Lee Byung-ho was pulling maneuvers that would have killed anyone without human reflexes and intuition. "Taking us through the ring gap," he announced calmly, even as chunks of ice the size of buildings whizzed past their hull. "Weapons locked on target Alpha," Sunwoo reported. "But sir, we're upside down and spinning." "Fire anyway," Taehyung ordered. The plasma torpedo launched from their inverted position, curved around a small moonlet using its gravity, and struck the lead Calrian cruiser from directly below, where their shields were weakest. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Song Minji's cyber warfare team was having the time of their lives. Her fingers flew across holographic keyboards as she infiltrated the Calrian communication networks. "Admiral Choi, we're inside their command system," she reported excitedly to the Defense Council. "Their security protocols are incredibly sophisticated, but completely rigid. They never considered that someone might try to hack them using chaos theory." "What can you do?" Admiral Choi asked. "Watch this," Minji smiled wickedly. She began feeding contradictory orders into the Calrian fleet network. Ship Alpha received commands to attack Ship Beta. Ship Beta was told that Ship Alpha had been captured by humans. The flagship received sensor data showing human vessels in 12 different locations simultaneously. Back at Saturn, the Calrian formation was falling apart. Their ships, designed to operate in perfect coordination, began turning on each other as false orders flooded their communication channels. "Target is painting us with fire control radar," shouted the Calrian weapons officer aboard Thexvor's flagship. "What target?" Thexvor demanded. "There are no human ships on our scanners." At that moment, the UES Ghost materialized from behind Saturn's moon Enceladus, where it had been hiding in the ice geysers shooting from the moon's surface. The human ship had literally been flying inside a fountain of frozen water, using it as camouflage. The Ghost's experimental railgun, designed by breaking every safety regulation in the book, fired a tungsten rod at 15% the speed of light. The projectile punched through the Calrian cruiser's armor like it was made of paper. "Sir, we're receiving panic signals from the entire Calrian fleet," Lieutenant Nayon reported with barely contained glee. "They're requesting immediate reinforcements. And get this, they're asking for instructions on how to fight impossible enemies." Taehyung watched as two more Calrian ships collided with each other, their perfect formation dissolved into complete disorder. These beings had conquered civilizations by following the same playbook for centuries. They had never faced an enemy that threw the playbook out the window and made up new rules on the spot. For the first time in their military history, the mighty Calrian Empire was retreating in confusion and fear. The throne room of the Calrian flagship trembled as High Commander Zethmar's roar echoed through the crystalline walls. Battle reports floated in holographic displays around him, each one showing the impossible. His perfect war machine was being torn apart by creatures he had dismissed as primitive insects. 17 star systems. Zethmar's claws scraped against his command throne, leaving deep gouges in the metal. 17 civilizations knelt before our might, and now these humans make fools of our greatest commanders. Commander Thexvor stood in the center of the War Council chamber, his once proud posture broken. His armor bore scorch marks, from the Saturn battle, and his yellow eyes had lost their predatory gleam. "High Commander, they do not fight like any species we have encountered. They break every rule of warfare." "Explain," Zethmar demanded, his massive form rising from the throne. "They use their own ships as weapons, ramming our vessels at impossible speeds. They hide inside asteroid fields and attack from within ice geysers. One of their captains actually flew his ship upside down through our formation while firing backwards." Thexivor's voice cracked with disbelief. "Our psychological warfare protocols have no effect. When we threaten them, they laugh." The other members of the War Council shifted uncomfortably. General Kithmos, conqueror of the Zenthari systems, spoke up. "Perhaps they are simply too primitive to understand fear." "No," Thexvor shook his head violently. "They understand fear perfectly. They feel it, acknowledge it, then do the impossible anyway. One human pilot told me over open communication that our threats were adorably dramatic before destroying 3 of our cruisers with a cargo hauler filled with explosives." Silence fell over the chamber. In 500 years of Calrian expansion, no enemy had ever mocked their might and lived. "Then we escalate." Zethmar's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "Deploy the world burners, weapons that have turned entire solar systems into cosmic graveyards. Let these humans face the fury that erased the Gorvak home galaxy." But as the Calrian Empire prepared its ultimate weapons, Earth had become something unrecognizable. The blue planet now sparkled with thousands of orbital construction platforms that worked around the clock. What had once taken months to build was now completed in days. Engineer Kang Hyunwoo floated through the zero-gravity assembly bay of Lunar Station, watching robotic arms piece together spacecraft at incredible speed. "Computer status report on the new drive systems," he called out. "Drive efficiency increased by 300%, the AI responded. "Warning, these modifications exceed all safety parameters by significant margins." Hyunwoo grinned. "Perfect. How many ships can we produce per day?" "At current rate, 47 combat vessels and 32 support craft daily. However, these production speeds violate 17 industrial safety regulations." "Cancel all safety regulations," Hyunwoo ordered without hesitation. "We're not building ships for a safety inspection. We're building them to fight aliens who want to burn our world." Across the solar system, similar scenes played out on Mars, Titan, and dozens of asteroid mining stations that had been converted into weapons factories. Humanity had discovered something the Calrians never expected. When faced with extinction, humans didn't just fight harder, they fought smarter. Dr. Lee Jungkook's weapons laboratory on Ceres buzzed with activity as his team dissected captured Calrian technology. The alien plasma cannons lay in pieces across examination tables, their inner workings exposed like the organs of some technological creature. "Fascinating," Jungkook muttered, studying energy flow patterns on his holographic display. "They've built limiters into every weapon system." His assistant, Dr. Im Nayung, looked up from a disassembled power core. "Limiters? Safety features. Maximum power output caps. Automatic shutdown protocols, heat dissipation requirements." Jungkook began pulling components from the alien weapon. They designed their weapons to be civilized. "And if we remove the limiters?" Nayung asked. Jungkook's grin would have sent chills down any Calrian spine. "Then we get weapons that can punch holes through moons." Within hours, the modified Calrian plasma cannons were being installed on human vessels. The aliens had spent centuries perfecting weapons that were powerful but safe. Humans removed the safety, doubled the power, and accepted that the weapons might explode and kill their own crews. It was a risk calculation that no other species had ever been willing to make. When the Calrian reinforcement fleet emerged from hyperspace 3 weeks later, they expected to find the scattered remains of human resistance. Instead, they faced an armada that defied comprehension. "By the void," whispered Captain Velthar as his sensors analyzed the human fleet. "They have ships built from our own technology, but the energy signatures are impossible. The human vessels hung in space like mechanical predators. Calrian drive systems had been stripped down, rebuilt, and pushed far beyond their design limits. Weapons that should have been impossible to power were mounted on hulls that gleamed with experimental armor plating. "Sir, incoming transmission." "From the human fleet," his communications officer reported with trembling voice. The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Choi Daesung aboard the UES Retribution. Behind him, the bridge buzzed with activity as human crew members operated stations built from a fusion of human engineering and captured alien technology. Calrian Fleet, Admiral Choi's voice was calm and professional. You have entered human space without permission. You have threatened our homeworld and attacked our vessels. We strongly suggest you reconsider your current course of action. Captain Velthar tried to project the same confidence that had served the Empire for centuries. Human, you face the combined might of 50 Calrian battlecruisers. Your primitive vessels cannot stand against. His words died as the human fleet began to move. Ships accelerated at speeds that should have crushed their crews, weapons charged with energy levels that violated the laws of physics. And, worst of all, they moved in patterns that made no tactical sense, but somehow felt terrifyingly effective. The Calrians were about to learn that humans didn't just break the rules of warfare. They rewrote them entirely. The crystal spires of Calros Prime reached toward the crimson sky like the claws of some dying beast. For 800 years, these towers had stood as monuments to Calrian supremacy, their walls echoing with the cries of conquered civilizations. Today they trembled under the shadow of a human fleet that had accomplished the impossible. Ambassador Kim Seo-jun walked through the Hall of Dominion with measured steps, his boots clicking against polished stone that had been carved from the bones of defeated worlds. Behind him, Admiral Park Jimin and Dr. Yoon Sanha followed, their presence a stark reminder that humanity had not come as supplicants, but as conquerors who chose mercy. High Commander Zethmar knelt in the center of the vast chamber, his once mighty form broken and defeated. Around him, the surviving members of the Calrian War Council sat in stunned silence. These beings, who had commanded fleets across 17 star systems, now faced the unthinkable reality of total defeat. The irony is not lost on us, Seo-jun said, quietly, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's acoustics. You brought us here to kneel before your throne. Instead, you kneel before representatives of a species you called primitive. Above them, visible through the transparent dome of the hall, the human armada hung in orbit like mechanical angels of vengeance. Ships that had once been Calrian technology now bore human modifications that pushed them far beyond their original capabilities. The UES Judgment, flagship of the human fleet, slowly rotated to keep its weapons pointed at the planet below. How? Zethmar's voice cracked like breaking glass. We studied your species for weeks before the first attack. Your ships were crude, your weapons laughable. How did you turn our own technology against us so completely? Dr. Sanha stepped forward, her tablet displaying holographic battle footage that made several Calrian councillors flinch. Your mistake was assuming we would fight like every other species you've conquered. You expected us to follow your rules. The hologram showed human ships performing maneuvers that violated every principle of safe space travel. Vessels spinning through asteroid fields at impossible speeds, using gravity wells as weapons, and coordinating attacks that changed strategy every few seconds. The Zenthari fought you with crystal ships that moved in perfect formation, Admiral Jimin observed, his tactical mind still analyzing the data. The Gorvak used gravity manipulation, but followed predictable patterns. The Nexarians built dimensional fortresses, but operated them according to rigid protocols. They all thought collectively, Seo-jun added. When you threatened their leaders, their entire civilization would surrender. When you demonstrated superior firepower, they would calculate the odds and submit logically. Zethmar raised his massive head, confusion evident in his yellow eyes. And humans do not? Humans do something far more dangerous, Sanha replied, with a smile that sent chills through the assembled Calrians. We think individually, then choose to work together. When you threatened Earth, you didn't face one mind making logical decisions. You faced 8 billion minds, each one capable of creative solutions you never imagined. The holographic display shifted to show human industrial centers, orbital shipyards that had been built in impossible timeframes, asteroid mining operations, converted to weapons factories in a matter of days, and civilian vessels modified for combat, using principles that made Calrian engineers weep. Your world burner weapons were impressive, Admiral Jimin conceded, designed to sterilize entire planets powered by the cores of dead stars. Any rational species would have surrendered when faced with such overwhelming force. But humans aren't. Entirely rational, Seojun continued. When you deployed those weapons, our response wasn't surrender. It was to build bigger, more dangerous weapons and use them in ways you never considered. The battle footage showed human ships ramming world-burner platforms at relativistic speeds, turning their own vessels into kinetic weapons that could crack moons. It showed human pilots flying directly into the energy beams of planet-killer weapons, using the destructive force to charge their own experimental drives. "I fight without honor," General Kithmos spoke from his position among the defeated council. "You use tactics that risk your own lives for marginal advantage." "We fight without limits," Seojun corrected. "Honor is a luxury for species that can afford to lose. When you threatened to burn our world, you made survival more important than safety." Dr. Sanha activated another display, this one showing the liberation of conquered worlds. Zenthari crystal ships flying in chaotic but effective formations learned from human tactics. Gorvak gravity manipulators working in unpredictable patterns that confused their former masters. Nexarian dimensional fortresses appearing and disappearing without warning. "You created an empire based on fear and predictability," she explained. "But you also created the seeds of your own destruction. Every species you conquered learned to hate rigid hierarchy. When we showed them that chaos could be more powerful than order, they embraced it." Seojun placed a data tablet on the ceremonial table before Zethmar. "Our terms are simple: immediate release of all enslaved species, full reparations to conquered worlds, dismantling of your military hierarchy, and submission to human-mediated peace negotiations." "And if we refuse?" Zethmar asked, though his voice held no defiance. Admiral Jimin gestured toward the dome above them, where human ships continued their orbital patrol. "Then we demonstrate why 17 civilizations now call us liberators instead of conquerors. The choice is yours, but choose quickly. Our patience is not infinite." The High Commander looked around the chamber at his defeated council, then at the human representatives who had accomplished in months what his empire had thought impossible. Slowly, painfully, he pressed his clawed hand to the data tablet, accepting the terms of surrender. "You have not just defeated us," Zethmar whispered, his voice filled with terrible understanding. "You have changed what warfare means in this galaxy." Commander Thexivor, the proud Calrian who had first threatened humanity, spoke from his place among the fallen. "We declared war on the wrong species. We thought we were conquering primitives. Instead, we awakened something that will reshape the stars themselves." Outside, across the galaxy, freed civilizations began dismantling rigid hierarchies and embracing the chaotic creativity that humans had taught them. The age of predictable conquest was ending. The age of unlimited possibility had begun. Seojun looked out at the human fleet one final time, then turned back to the defeated Calrian leadership. "Welcome to the new paradigm. Try to keep up. The end."